The breaking point. The observation deck of the Galactic Union headquarters floated in the void between stars, a massive structure built from materials that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. Ambassador David Torres stood before the curved viewport, watching distant galaxies spin in their eternal dance. He had been summoned here without explanation, pulled from a diplomatic conference on Arcturus Prime with barely enough time to board a transport. Behind him, the chamber doors opened with a sound like grinding stone. 3 beings entered, each representing one of the Union's founding races. First came Executor Thane, a towering figure whose species had ruled the western spiral arm for 3 millennia. His body was covered in metallic scales that shifted colors with his mood, currently displaying deep crimson. Beside him floated Counselor Zeph, an energy being contained within a crystalline matrix pulsing with cold blue light. The third was Archon Velnus, whose form resembled a massive insect covered in Baroque armor plating. David turned to face them, keeping his expression neutral despite the knot forming in his stomach. In his 2 years as Earth's primary representative to the Union, he had learned to read the subtle signs of alien body language. Everything about this meeting screamed danger. Executor Thane spoke first. His voice translated through the neural implant all ambassadors received. Ambassador Torres, humanity's probationary period with the Galactic Union has concluded. We have deliberated on your species' application for full membership. David felt a flicker of hope. Humanity had worked hard to prove themselves worthy. They had contributed resources, shared scientific discoveries, and sent peacekeepers to troubled regions. We're honored by your consideration, Executor. The Union has rejected your application. Thane's words hit like a physical blow. Furthermore, the Council has determined that humanity poses a significant threat to galactic stability. We are implementing corrective measures. David's mind raced. Threat? We've honored every agreement, contributed to every initiative. What threat are you talking about? Counselor Zeph's crystalline form pulsed brighter. Your very nature is the threat, human. Your species reproduces at alarming rates. You spread across planets like infection. You resist integration into proper hierarchical structures. Most concerning, you possess an irrational attachment to individual freedom that undermines collective harmony. These are not flaws, David protested. These are fundamental aspects of who we are. Precisely, Archon Velnus clicked, his mandibles spreading. Which is why the Union has no choice but to act. You will receive formal notification within the hour. But we thought it courteous to inform you personally. Earth and all human colonies must comply with the following within 96 hours. Thane activated a holographic display. The terms appeared in glowing text and David felt his blood run cold as he read them. First, Earth's unified government would be dissolved. Union administrators would assume control of all 23 human worlds. Second, humanity's defense fleet would be dismantled immediately. All warships, from the massive carriers to the smallest patrol craft, would be surrendered to Union forces. Third, all human military personnel would be processed through re-education centers to eliminate what the Union called aggressive tendencies. Fourth, a mandatory birth control program would reduce human population growth to Union-approved levels. Fifth, human cultural practices that promoted individualism would be banned and replaced with Union-approved collective traditions. The list continued, each point more invasive than the last. By the time David finished reading, he understood the truth. This was not reform. This was extinction by another name. You're asking us to stop being human, David said quietly. We are requiring you to become civilized, Thane corrected. Many species have undergone similar transformations. The process is uncomfortable but necessary. Those who refused faced harsher consequences. David looked up sharply. What consequences? The 3 Union leaders exchanged glances. Finally, Zeph spoke. 17 species have rejected Union integration over the past 2,000 years. 16 of them no longer exist. The 17th exists as agricultural workers on Union farming worlds, their technology stripped away, their population reduced to sustainable levels. The threat was clear. Comply or be destroyed. David thought of Earth, of the 8 billion people who had no idea their freedom hung by such a thin thread. He thought of the colonies, the brave settlers who had pushed humanity to the stars. He thought of his own daughter, studying engineering at Luna University, dreaming of designing starships. I need to consult with my government, David said, forcing his voice to remain steady. Of course, Thane said. You have 12 hours to transmit your initial response. 96 hours until full compliance begins. We suggest you advise cooperation. Resistance would be futile and tragic. David left the chamber and rushed to the human embassy section of the station. His staff saw his face and immediately understood something terrible had happened. His chief aide, Monica Chen, met him at the door of the secure communications room. Get me the Secretary General, David ordered. Priority 1, maximum encryption. And pull every file we have on Union enforcement actions against non-compliant species. While waiting for the connection to establish, David reviewed the data Monica's team compiled. What he found made his hands shake. The Union had not simply defeated the 17 resistant species. They had systematically erased them. Planets scoured clean. Entire populations gone. The survivors of the 17th species, the Keltor, had been reduced from a spacefaring civilization of billions to barely 3 million laborers scattered across Union worlds, forbidden to use technology beyond simple farming tools. The holographic display activated, showing Secretary General Amanda Okonkwo in her office in Geneva. The woman was 60 years old, gray-haired, and possessed the kind of steady calm that had guided humanity through a dozen crises. But when David explained the situation, even her composure cracked. They're serious about this? Okonkwo asked. Absolutely. They've done it before. Multiple times. Madam Secretary, if we refuse, they will come at us with everything they have. The Union has 5,000 years of technological advancement on us. Their fleets number in the tens of thousands. We have 400 ships, and most of those are explorer vessels or light frigates. Okonkwo was silent for a long moment. And if we comply? Then humanity as we know it ends. We become what they want us to be. Controlled, limited, eventually absorbed into their collective until nothing remains of our identity. Those are our choices? Submit or die. David nodded slowly. Unless we find a third option. Is there a third option, David? David thought about the research projects he had heard whispers about. Projects that humanity had kept secret from the Union. Experimental technologies that might give them an edge. Long-shot possibilities that seemed like fantasy. But fantasy was better than the certainty of extinction. Maybe, David said, but we would need time. And we would need to be willing to fight. Okonkwo closed her eyes. I'll convene the World Council immediately. This decision cannot be made by one person. But David, start preparing our response. If we refuse, we need to be ready for what comes next. The connection ended. David stood alone in the communications room, the weight of humanity's future pressing down on him. Outside the window, the stars continued their eternal dance, beautiful and indifferent. Somewhere out there, Union warships were probably already moving into position, preparing to enforce compliance. David pulled up his personal files and found a photo of his daughter, Maria, smiling in her university lab coat. He thought about what kind of life she would have under Union control. No freedom to choose her path. No ability to question or explore beyond approved boundaries. A half-life, constrained and controlled. He thought about the millions who had died throughout human history fighting for freedom. The revolutionaries, the soldiers, the ordinary people who had stood up to tyrants and oppressors. Humanity had never accepted chains willingly. They had broken empire after empire, overcome every attempt to control them. Maybe they could do it one more time. David began drafting humanity's response to the ultimatum. He chose his words carefully, knowing they might be the last diplomatic message Earth ever sent. He wrote about freedom, about the right of any species to determine its own destiny. He wrote about courage, about refusing to kneel even in the face of overwhelming power. When he finished, he sent it to Secretary General Okonkwo with a simple note. If we're going to refuse, let's do it with our heads held high. Then David Torres, Ambassador of Humanity, began preparing for war. The fury unleashed. The World Council chamber in Geneva had never been so crowded. Every nation's representative was present, either physically or via holographic projection. The debate had raged for 8 hours and tensions were reaching a breaking point. Some argued for compliance, claiming that survival mattered more than pride. Others demanded resistance, insisting that a life without freedom was not worth living. Secretary General Okonkwo finally called for order, her voice cutting through the chaos. We have heard all arguments. It is time to decide. Earth stands at a crossroads. We can submit to the Union's demands and preserve our lives at the cost of our identity, or we can refuse and face the consequences. This vote will determine humanity's path for generations to come. The electronic voting system activated. Each representative entered their choice privately. The numbers appeared on the main display, updating in real time. The chamber fell silent as everyone watched the count. When the final tally appeared, Okonkwo read it aloud. By a vote of 147 to 68, the World Council has decided to refuse the Union's ultimatum. The chamber erupted in a mixture of cheers and protests. Okonkwo raised her hand for silence. The decision is made. Now we must prepare. Admiral, you're authorized to implement Protocol Nightfall. In orbit above Earth, Admiral William Cross received the transmission aboard the carrier Defiance. He was a career military officer, 55 years old, with scars from the Outer Rim conflicts that had plagued humanity's early expansion. He had spent the last 30 years preparing humanity's defense forces for threats both known and unknown. He had never imagined facing an enemy as powerful as the Galactic Union. Cross activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Cross. Earth has refused the Union ultimatum. As of this moment, we are at war with the Galactic Union. Execute Protocol Nightfall. May God have mercy on us all. Protocol Nightfall had been developed in absolute secrecy over the past 5 years. A small group of scientists and military strategists had recognized that humanity might one day face a technologically superior foe. Traditional military doctrine would not work against an enemy that outgunned and outnumbered them so dramatically. They needed something different. The protocol had 3 phases. First, dispersal. Humanity's fleet would scatter across their territory, refusing to mass into targets the Union could easily destroy. Second, unconventional warfare. Human ships would employ tactics no other species had used, striking from unexpected angles and refusing to fight fair. Third, and most critical, the activation of Project Slip. Project Slip was humanity's secret weapon, developed from research into quantum mechanics that had stumbled onto something remarkable. Human scientists had discovered a way to create temporary micro-wormholes, allowing ships to teleport short distances instantaneously. The technology was unstable, dangerous, and had a failure rate of nearly 20%. But it also made human ships unpredictable in ways that Union vessels could not match. Commander Rachel Stone stood on the bridge of the destroyer Relentless, stationed near Jupiter's orbital facilities. She was 32 years old, one of the youngest ship commanders in the fleet, and had been handpicked to test the slip technology in combat. Her crew of 85 had trained for months, practicing the split-second timing required to use the new drive system. "Ma'am, Union forces dropping out of FTL," her sensor officer called out. "Multiple contacts. I'm reading 247 ships." Rachel felt her stomach clench but kept her voice steady. Classification: 100 dreadnoughts, 100 cruisers, 47 support vessels. They're moving into attack formation around Jupiter Station. The Union had sent a massive force to ensure compliance. Jupiter Station was home to 15,000 civilians, the largest human settlement beyond Earth and Mars. The Union clearly intended to use it as an example. "All ships, form up on me," Rachel ordered, "but maintain dispersal pattern Sigma. Do not cluster." Her small task force consisted of 12 destroyers and 6 frigates. Against 247 Union warships, they were hopelessly outmatched. But Rachel had no intention of fighting fair. The Union fleet transmitted a message. A translated voice boomed across all frequencies. "Human vessels, you are ordered to stand down and surrender immediately. Resistance will result in the destruction of Jupiter Station and all military assets. You have 5 minutes to comply." Rachel opened a channel to her task force. "All ships, this is Stone. They expect us to either surrender or charge them like idiots. We're going to do neither. Activate slip drives on my mark. Execute Pattern Chaos 7. Pattern Chaos 7 was designed for exactly this scenario. Each ship would slip randomly around the battlefield, appearing at unpredictable locations, firing, then slipping away before the enemy could respond. It was exhausting for the crews, dangerous for the ships, and completely outside Union combat doctrine. Mark. The Relentless vanished from its position and reappeared 3,000 kilometers away, directly behind a Union cruiser. Rachel's weapons officer fired a full spread of missiles before the enemy could react. The cruiser's shields absorbed most of the damage, but several missiles penetrated, tearing into its engineering section. Before the Union vessel could return fire, the Relentless slipped again. Across the battlefield, 18 human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking and vanishing. The Union fleet tried to track them, but their targeting systems could not predict where the human vessels would appear next. It was chaos, exactly as Rachel had planned. A Union dreadnought exploded as 3 destroyers appeared simultaneously around it, overwhelming its shields with concentrated fire. The human ship slipped away before the surrounding Union vessels could assist. Another cruiser took catastrophic damage when a frigate slipped inside its shield perimeter and fired at point-blank range. But the Union fleet was learning. They began firing randomly, saturating areas of space with weapons fire, hoping to catch human ships as they appeared. The Dauntless slipped into a firestorm and was destroyed instantly. The Courage took a direct hit from a dreadnought's main cannon, breaking apart in a flash of white light. Rachel watched her people die and felt rage building in her chest. The Union had started this. They had demanded submission. They had threatened extinction. Now they were learning what happened when you backed humanity into a corner. All ships concentrate fire on their flagship, Rachel ordered. Slip pattern Delta. We're taking that dreadnought down. 10 remaining destroyers executed a coordinated series of slips, appearing around the Union flagship from every direction simultaneously. The massive vessel's shields flared under the bombardment, holding for precious seconds. Then a lucky shot from the Relentless penetrated the shield generator, and the barriers collapsed. Dozens of missiles slammed into the flagship's hull. Internal explosions rippled through the enormous vessel. The ship broke in half, its reactor going critical. The explosion was visible from Jupiter Station, a small sun blooming in the darkness. The Union fleet hesitated. They had come expecting easy victory, and had instead lost their commander and over a dozen ships. Human vessels continued to slip around them, impossible to pin down, striking and vanishing like predators in the dark. Then the Union force commander made a decision that would haunt the galaxy. Unable to defeat the human warships, he turned his fleet toward Jupiter Station. Rachel saw the move and understood immediately. No, you bastards don't, but she was too far away. Union dreadnoughts opened fire on the station, their massive weapons tearing through the civilian structure. 15,000 people died in less than 3 minutes. Rachel screamed in fury and grief. All ships execute. Kill them all! The human task force, now down to 8 destroyers and 3 frigates, threw themselves at the Union fleet with suicidal fury. They slipped into impossible positions, taking damage they could not afford, accepting losses they could not sustain. But they killed. Oh, how they killed. By the time Earth's reinforcements arrived 2 hours later, the Union fleet had been reduced to 97 ships. They retreated in disorder, having learned a terrible lesson. Humanity could not be easily defeated, and when you made them angry, when you murdered their civilians, they would make you pay in blood. Admiral Cross arrived in the Defiance to find Jupiter Station destroyed and Rachel Stone's ship barely functional, held together by emergency force fields and the determination of her crew. He expected to find her defeated, traumatized by the loss. Instead, Rachel's face on the view screen showed nothing but cold fury. Admiral, request permission to pursue the enemy fleet, she said. Denied, Commander. Your ship is barely intact. Then give me a new ship, sir, because we're going to make them regret ever threatening us. We're going to make them regret every civilian they killed. We're going to teach the Galactic Union what happens when you awaken humanity's wrath. Cross looked at the young commander and saw the same fire he felt burning in his own chest. The Union had wanted to know if humanity would fight. They had their answer. Granted, Commander. Report to the Vengeance for immediate reassignment. And Commander, make them bleed. The Battle of Jupiter Station became the first engagement in what historians would later call the War of Liberation. The Union had expected quick victory. Instead, they had awakened something they did not understand. Humanity had spent thousands of years fighting each other, developing warfare into an art form. They knew how to fight when outnumbered. They knew how to strike from the shadows. They knew how to turn enemy strength into weakness. Most importantly, they knew how to hold a grudge. Across human space, the word spread. The Union had killed 15,000 civilians. The Union had demanded submission. The Union had threatened extinction. Humanity's response was unified and absolute. No. In the depths of space, human warships began to hunt. They used slip technology to strike Union supply convoys, appearing from nowhere, destroying their targets, vanishing before reinforcements arrived. They hit Union outposts on the edges of their territory, lightning raids that left nothing but wreckage. They refused to fight pitched battles, instead bleeding the Union fleet through 1,000 cuts. Ambassador Torres, still at Union headquarters, became humanity's voice to the galaxy. He broadcast messages to every species within range, telling them what the Union had done. He revealed the fate of the 17 species that had resisted. He showed footage of Jupiter Station's destruction, and slowly, quietly, other species began to listen. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Commander Rachel Stone planned her next strike. Her crew worked around her, young men and women who had volunteered to fight against impossible odds. She thought about the 15,000 dead at Jupiter Station. She thought about the Union's threats. She thought about her oath to defend humanity. Then she smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Set course for the Union supply depot at Kepler 442, she ordered. "Let's go hunting." The Galactic Union had triggered humanity's wrath. Now they would learn that some species should never be pushed to the edge. Because when humanity went to war, they did not fight for conquest or glory. They fought to win. End of parts 1 and 2.